Hello there, welcome back. In today's video, we finally tackle an illustration that I have been hinting at for a while now. It's been a couple weeks. And I originally had this concept back in May, I believe, where it was a character driving down the road with a dog in the car. And then back in July, I was traveling to and from my family for various reasons. I was traveling just about every week. Throughout the month, I thought about how I'd never incorporated desert elements in my work. I've lived in the desert my whole life, and while I think my younger self would have said it's dull and boring, I've begun to see the beauty in everything, even the mundane. As I continue exploring new topics in my artwork, I've gained more appreciation for things. So it's about time I paint the desert. One long trip home mid-July, I found the perfect spot to paint. There's a hilly region on the trek to and from my parents where the road gets windy, and it was just after a summer storm washed over the state, and this section of road, always lined with yellow flowers, was the most lush and green I'd ever seen it. And that's saying something, since I've made this drive probably about 50 times round trip. Once I knew the location to inspire this piece, I did some truck studies and St. Bernard studies. I knew I wanted a large dog in this scene. I like trying to incorporate new animals into my work. I chose St. Bernards because we have a neighbor with one, and he is huge. I vividly remember when my boyfriend and I first saw him. We'd just gotten home or were just about to leave, and we're sitting in my car. The neighbor was walking their dog, and my boyfriend and I were losing it over how cute and huge he was. He became a highlight of the day, and we'd watch for him every time we left and came home. We love dogs on this channel, okay? I haven't always wanted to do my studies when I sit down to do them, but I got more and more excited for this piece by doing so. I'm not usually very good at doing a lot of preparation for paintings, but I'm working on that, and I think it really shows with this piece. If you want to hear more about the thumbnailing process, I have a separate video where I did all of that, and that will be linked in the iCard on screen. I made my sketch of the truck with our characters and then transferred it to the final painting surface with my light box. I wasn't happy with the characters inside the truck on the sketch, so I resketched them on the watercolor paper. I also sketched the background directly on the painting surface. I was very happy with the finished sketch, and it made me nervous to start painting, but I started anyways. I blocked in the big washes of color in the background and made sure to add in their reflections on the truck. I do my best to work from light to dark, but I have a hard time developing my illustrations if it feels flat and lacks depth. I want the scenery to look blown out and sunny and focus on exposure for the shadows. So the characters and shadows in the background are what I want to spend the most time on. So instead of working on the background first, I started rendering our characters to bring in more values to the illustration. I find that despite my attempts to work from light to dark, I really need to start blocking in more range of values very early on in the piece, establishing a bit of a range to make it easier to build up the layers and values to a point that looks correct. I really struggle with values, and I find that it's easier when you put in like really dark darks and really light lights. Toward the end of the first painting session, after painting in the dark hair on the dog and our characters, I was just no longer in the best headspace for this piece, so I called it a day and came back with fresh eyes. With how much inspiration I drew from my life for this piece, I couldn't bear the thought of trying to push through when I wasn't in the right headspace. I was afraid I'd ruin it with every brushstroke, and I left it feeling like I already had. But when I came back refreshed, I was really happy with the progress made, and got back to work enthusiastically. I dove in establishing the darkest values, the tires, and then finished up our characters. I added in textures to the road and hills, and it felt like it was a little too much, so I did a wash over the hill in the back. I got to a point in watercolor where I didn't know what to do next, so I moved on into gouache. Immediately, I started reworking the distant background to be super flat and pastel. I think that really helped the piece. I think that the blue sky and mountains in the background were really distracting from the rest of the piece. The watercolor washes were really saturated, and it really made everything else look dull. Pushing it back by making it very pastel, where it's mixed with a lot of white, really makes the rest of the piece feel more vibrant, despite the fact that it's a desert and usually is made up of pretty dull colors. I wanted the truck and flowers to be a little glowy. I don't know that I reached the effect that I wanted, but I'll talk about that more at the end. I brought in gouache for the super patchy shadows on the back hill, and that really helped. I brightened up the color of the flowers and brought in the bushes and rocks with gouache, creating a bit more variation. I struggled with the cell towers, but I think they ended up okay. I was really struggling with them throughout the majority of this piece. I desperately tried not to overwork them, and I had a really hard time indicating the fact that they were cell towers. But when I was working in one of my watercolor layers, I had the idea to add in the cell tower lines in the shadow, and I think that really helped to indicate what they even were, because there isn't enough of the towers showing to even see what they are, other than just poles sticking out of the ground. I basically repainted the truck in gouache because it was really splotchy. I wanted it to be reflective, and I don't think I got the effect I wanted. I think that my watercolor values were too close in tone, and I really should have focused on pushing the values when it came to the gouache. I unfortunately ended up covering up all of the watercolor layers that were super light in color, and I should have really left those alone to let them peek through and make sure that there's a very large value range. The best way that I have found to paint metal in the past and really reflective surfaces is to have a very wide range in values. You want to have the darks really dark and the lights really light, in addition to the surroundings reflecting off of that surface. I might go back and repaint the truck because I know that I can do a better job. I just didn't have the energy to go back into it at the end. I am, however, super happy with how the front elements of the truck turned out, where we have the headlights and I don't really know what it's called in the front. I want to say it's called a guard, where it has like those lines in the front. I think that the way that I painted in all of those values really helped make it look like metal, and I feel like that's a really clear indication that I could have done it with the truck. I just needed to try harder. I'm not too happy with the characters in the truck, but there's only so much detail I can put in at that scale on the faces. The glowy parts are okay. There are some parts I like better than others, but that's because this effect was super experimental. Maybe I ruined it, but I don't think so. Overall, I am happy with this piece. There's of course parts that I like better than others, like the top left corner and the bottom right corners are my favorite. I love the top left, where you can see all of the different hues that I put into that shadow, and the dog's face. I am actually really happy with how that turned out. I was worried that in that background area I was going to lose contrast and everything was kind of going to blur together, so I'm really glad that I pulled that together and everything is mostly distinguishable. And the bottom right corner, I am pretty happy with how the front of the truck turned out, like I said before, and having in those yellow flowers along with all of the highlights. That area with the truck highlights I think is my favorite. I feel like I did go a little bit over the top. I like some areas. I like that front part with the highlights, and I also like the part where it overlaps with the tail of the dog and the ear of the dog. Those are my favorite little highlight tidbits. I do like how I went in and redid the one that's on that front headlight, but I wish that I hadn't done the other ones. I think that that one where I tried to smudge the red just over my boyfriend's character's head, I think that that turned out really weird, and I wish I hadn't done it that way. The highlights over the top of the mirror on the right side of the painting I think is not a very good spot. I think it blends in too much with the very light colored mountain, and it feels unnecessary. Overall, I think that I could have done some things differently, but like I said before, everything was super duper experimental. I honestly didn't dive into this piece feeling too confident in myself, especially with some of the background elements. I was worried about how I was going to texture the road and the hills, but I think that I figured that out pretty good. I was also worried about the lines on the road, but I'm really glad with how I approached it, painting in the shadows first and then having a light yellow wash to go over the top, having it being very simple and not too complicated. I'm not sure how I feel about the finished result. I still have some mixed feelings, but as time goes on, I'm sure that my feelings about this piece will become more defined, I guess. I always have trouble feeling one way about my paintings as soon as I'm done with them. It usually takes a little while for me to really mull over the process and the finished results of the painting for me to really have a holistic feeling about it, because I often leave my paintings having mixed feelings. So I think for the rest of this video, I want to give some life updates. As you guys can tell, over the last several weeks, I have been uploading a lot more frequently. I was going to be uploading 3 times a week, but I have decided to go to 2 times a week. I want to have more simple like sketchbooking videos and having more complicated like really big paintings like this one. So I want to have a good variety of content, and I'm also going to be going back to a job. So if you don't know, I have been unemployed for quite some time. I have been doing some freelance video editing on the side, but I don't really make a significant amount of money from that. So I am going to, in addition to what I'm working on here, going to be working a technically full-time job. I have already started Peachtober. I just haven't been able to get the shorts out quite yet because this week has been pretty hectic doing I did a lot of work for Peachtober, which you guys will see tomorrow because this video is coming out super late. So tomorrow's video is my huge Peachtober video, and there is so much art in that video, and then on top of this really big painting, it's just been a very chaotic week. So the job that I'm going to be going into, it is only 3 times a week, but it's like 12 hours a day, so I will still have plenty of time to work on YouTube, but on the days that I work, I won't have time for basically anything, but I'm still going to be working full-time hours, so that's why I said it was kind of full-time. This is what I was doing in January, and it worked super well for me to balance YouTube and working full-time. I have been working on getting ahead on my videos, so I want to definitely maintain uploading twice a week. And you'll also notice that I have been making a ton more illustrations, so I really want to nail down my illustration portfolio and start sending that out to children's book publishing agencies towards the end of this year. And I have some really big plans for the rest of this year and early next year. I don't want to talk too much about them in case I can't make the deadlines. And I did decide to close down my Ko-Fi. I was also closing down my Patreon, but I think I am ultimately going to redo my Patreon a bit and then reopen that. I really struggle using Ko-Fi. It's a platform, for those of you who don't know, that is like Patreon, where you can have like a subscription for creators that you enjoy the content of and get additional content. And you can also host a store on there, among other things. It is a really cool platform and I really like it. I just really struggle with posting on it when I can't really, there's no app for it for me to access on my phone. I can use it in the browser, but it's not, the formatting with it on my phone just isn't really easy to use. So I think that using Patreon is going to be the best method for me to engage with people who want to support my career further. So I am not going to be using Ko-Fi anymore and am only going to be using Patreon. I do want to revamp it though. I have a really hard time putting together rewards that I can manageably do each month at the same time as YouTube and working on different projects. So it's been difficult, but I've also had some really big project ideas that I want to work on, but I don't really want to share publicly quite yet. So that'll be definitely something that I would be sharing on Patreon. I don't really have anything else to say, so I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more art videos. If you guys have any questions, you guys can always leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.